America's Mayor live. America's Mayor is taking his own shot of himself here with a 360 degree. I'll put it up higher after a bit with a 360 degree Insta 3. He's been
360.
working 360 Insta 3 Pro 3. That's it. A little teeny camera. It's going to get everybody all around the whole, as they say in Yiddish, mit and shkaboodle. But you don't know what mit and shkaboodle means. That's a good old Yiddish word. It means.
I have no idea. What?
Mit and shkaboodle. It means with everything all around. With everything all around. We're going to take the show off today.
You sound like.
We are going to talk about the person who's never around.
Well, you sound like Klaus Schwab when you talk like that.
Oh,
doesn't it?
Klaus Schwab is a good friend of mine. Why don't you introduce?
That nasty guy.
Why don't we begin? Ted is going to get another time to shine, as he did when he substituted me several times. He was great.
Ratings tanked. One day they bounced back when we got the mayor back.
And then questioned me a few times. Now he's going to be. Too bad we don't have time to switch. And I would have done this in uniform if I had thought about it, and I was smart enough to do it. But I am now. We're going to start the show all over again. And Ted's going to start the show from that side. Ted, could you put that other camera on, please, so that we can see you?
Yes.
All right. I want them to see Ted because he has a face for television. We don't have him on radio because he's got a face for radio. Sometimes you never know. It's like Andrew. Andrew's got a face for television. Maria's got a hell of a face for television. You should see what we do whenever we live stream. Woo! But in any event, we're going to do a little switch here. Ted's going to introduce the show. You're in for a little fictionalization, right? He's going to play former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, America's Mayor, America Mayor Live. And I'm going to play Klaus Schwab. And you're going to introduce me, and you're going to interview me about my world view and what I think of the United States and where we're going, which everyone wants to know, because he knows where we're going. You don't. I will not put. I don't have my Klaus Schwab outfit, which would make the imitation about 30% better, but I think I can.
And I have to lean here a little bit, Mayor. So I'm going to start off here. Welcome to America's Mayor Live. I'm America's Mayor, Rudolph W. Giuliani. And we have with us here a very special guest, the chairperson of the very important World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab.
Hello, Rudolph. Hello, Rudolph.
Hello, sir.
Why did you never come back after I invited you, Rudolph?
So, Mr. So Klaus Schwab, did you follow the science throughout this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic? What's the origin of the virus?
I followed the science. I followed the science. Dr. Fauci. You follow science. I follow Dr. Fauci.
And do you stand by all of the decisions made throughout this pandemic in terms of, the vaccine, making it mandatory and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Do you give me a chance to check?
Of course.
I stand by Fauci.
So, Mr. Klaus Schwab, are you still mandating vaccines?
The mandate, you have to have your card. If you don't have your card, you know what happens to you? Yeah, I'll show you what happens to you. You go in, you say with your girlfriend, I want to impress my girlfriend. And I take it to fine restaurant, big money. Take out my credit card, my gold, the platinum, yellow ring, the starred credit card. That comes from Germany. And then They say, "Where's your card? Your card." So this is my card. Where's your card? I want to see your card and your papers. Now I want to see your papers. I didn't bring my papers. Well, here comes the one world police.
That's them running towards you.
That's their that's them
Footsteps.
knocking their batons on the ground. And there I am, I'm taken away. You get taken away. And then you come and see me. And I say to you, at the Klaus Schwab headquarters, where are your papers? Where are your papers?
So of course the mayor making the kind of
We go and pack the papers.
comparing
you got the papers.
the vaccine
You got to have your
passports.
papers. You got to have your papers.
Yeah, so the mayor
You
here.
got to have your papers.
So what you're
You got
doing
your
is
papers.
comparing the vaccine mandates, in certain areas, certain states.
One world.
People
No
were
two.
mandated
No
to
two.
show
No
a
three.
vaccine card,
No America.
right? So this is what
One world good. America bad. You had slavery. You had slavery.
that's right. Well, thank you, Chairperson. I know you're very busy
slavery.
working on the pandemic
You had slavery.
and the next one. So
You had slavery.
we'll check back in with you, Chairperson Schwab, in the near future. Thanks for
One
joining us.
world. No America. One world. Go away. Papers. All papers for everyone.
So
We can be much more comfortable with. We were much more comfortable with papers.
So Professor Klaus Schwab was actually born in Ravensburg, Germany in 1938, and he is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. Didn't know he was the founder.
I was the founder. Notice the date, 1938.
So thank you for joining us, Mr. Schwab. Mr. Schwab.
Thank you.
We're gonna now
For
return.
having me. One world. Global. No in America.
We're gonna
Just
return.
Global. Global. Don't forget to mention my friend, Mr. Soros. He pays all the bills. Mr. Soros pays all the bills. Thank you, Mr. Soros. You have special papers.
Well,
And
thank
then-
you,
and
Mr.
thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Biden.
And
Thank you.
the
Thank
crew,
you,
the
Mr.
whole crew's out here tonight. And
Thank
the
you, Herr
crowd is
Biden.
demanding that Mayor Giuliani return.
Thank you, Herr Biden. And you have your papers. And what's that guy you got? That son. We had to give him about 50 papers. He keeps losing his paper.
Hunter, he's a
Every time.
expert on global
we-
energy.
We pick him up in every house in Europe. I don't know what to do.
Well, thanks for joining us. We are now going to return to our regular scheduled programming with America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Thanks, sir. We're happy to have you back. Mayor, I don't know if you know this, but for the past 10 minutes or so, we had Klaus Schwab with us. He's gone now, though. Don't worry. He's
Gosh,
out.
I
He's
must
gone.
be getting like Biden. I didn't remember the whole thing.
Yeah, right?
But I don't go out for 2-3 hours, just a half hour. Nothing like Biden.
So, Mayor, of course, a lot happening this week. The January 6th story, which some people seem surprised this week, right? It's as if they're just becoming aware of the massive.
You would
hoax
think,
and
of course, they were
setup.
surprised, but
But we knew this from the start.
Let's not be unfair to the people. Let's be actually appreciative to the fact that so many of them pick it up, given the light of the censorship we have, which I think Klaus Schwab, on the day he was born in Germany, would have found less to be than in America today. How many people do you think knew that committee played less than 1% of the tape that's available for January 6th, and apparently looked at only 10%? No one. Now, I could take any incident. I could take a battle and convince you the other side won if you let me play only 1/10 of 1% of the entire video. Show you all the atrocities by one side, none by the other, none that justified it, none that maybe showed that it was self-defensive, none that made you show their mistakes. I could convince you that a team won a baseball game that lost 10-1 by not showing you the 10 runs, showing you the 1 run and ending the game. This is essentially what the people who ran January 6th did. Now, you say to me, Rudolph Giuliani, how could you say that? You're just exaggerating. You're doing what you just did with the show, making fun of Klaus Schwab, blah, 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 blah. The name of my podcast, which is a prerequisite to listening to this show, so that you're going to be able, now that we have call-in, able to call in and ask good questions, because my podcasts are, I consider to be an education. And we're going to set them up that way. In addition to my podcast, if you really want to know what's going on, you have to read. Don't want to scare anybody. I don't know how many young people are around. We have in our audience today all adults, except for Grace. And Grace is going to be brainwashed into being a reader. She already is. Last night, she led off the show to wild applause. And Grandpa got jealous, didn't put her on today, because she gets more attention. She could have all the attention she wants. She's adorable. She's playing right over there. So the reality is very, very simple. We have a country that's been brainwashed effectively. Do not think we haven't been effectively brainwashed. I can't give you percentages. Nobody polls quite that way. You know, they don't poll you and say, are you brainwashed? Yes, I am. Very few people would know they were, right? But even if they did, you know, even if you had certain key things, and there are ways to tell, you'd never be able to tell completely. So here's how I know we're brainwashed, okay? First of all, I've known it for 50 years because I grew up in New York, and I went through a political transformation of my own from growing up in a family that was half Republican, half Democrat. Extremely anti-communist, which was the political, probably the political core of my family, because ultimately, no matter what they disagreed upon, it brought them together. You know, like about labor. My father was pro-labor. My mother was more anti-labor. However, my father was anti-communist labor. So he joined all the movements that were trying to root communism out of the labor unions, of which there were many then, many communist labor unions and many men and women trying to drive them out. My mother was a Republican and pro McCarthy. My father was more or less anti-McCarthy as a Democrat, but they came together on the fact that McCarthy had the right purpose, rooting out the communists from the Roosevelt administration and eventually the Truman administration. And it overcame my father's Democratic allegiances to the point where that became more important, even though they both agreed he went too far. So that's the way I grew up, rooting out and smelling out communists. You are in the middle of a communist takeover of this country. I don't even feel like I'm going to be terribly criticized for saying that tomorrow. If I said that 5 years ago, well, Biden wouldn't have been in office. 3 years ago, Biden's state police would be at the door arresting me tomorrow morning, put me in the loony bin. Now I'd be checking them for their communist credentials. The reality is I can give you a chapter and verse. I'll give you just two, because it's the two key things Marx wanted. He wanted our children and he wanted our God. He got them both. He took God out of America. Took God right out of America. You can't pray in schools. You can't say a prayer to a universal God, to a universal supreme being. You know how arrogant that is, that we're the supreme being? We, us little pieces of dirt, are the supreme beings. We can't pray to a supreme being in any form that it might exist. That's what it means to say not to establish a religion? No, it doesn't. It means not to establish a religion, not to establish the Church of England and kill everybody else who isn't. That's what it means. It's modified by the free exercise of religion clause, which allows you to exercise your religion, which that violates. You can't have a religious scene in a city that is predominantly of one religious persuasion, even if it doesn't discriminate against others if they want to have their religious scenes. It isn't really so much discrimination, it's driving God out. But there's something important also to Marx and Engels. Marx and Engels realized that if they drove God out, if they kept around those other people who care about the lives and the well-being of children, children might have good and decent lives. But they couldn't have good and decent lives because they had to be dedicated to communism. And most of them weren't going to be rich, wealthy oligarchs like Marx and Engels and Stalin and Z and AOC. And most of them were going to be simple, very poor people. And somebody was going to tell them, this isn't terribly fair. Well, somebody had to love them to tell them that. So let's get rid of the parents. Let's get rid of the family. After all, the family's a creature of Christianity. Mary and Joseph, and they forget there were families a long time before Christianity. They forget a lot of things, like the whole Black Lives Matter movement and CRT and everything. Slavery started with America. You realize how historically ignorant that is? This history existed long before there was an America, long before Columbus discovered it. History is a strange thing. I mean, you can call it history and make it up, but it's not. History is a reasonable attempt in good faith to reasonably recreate the past. You're not reasonably recreating the past when you tell me that history says that America invented something that existed in the Bible. The Jews were slaves, weren't they? Many of the other Assyrians were slaves at different times. The Romans had slaves. The Greeks had slaves. The Peloponnesians had slaves. People in the northern countries had slaves. People in all of the eastern and what are now Middle Eastern country had slaves. People in Africa had slaves. Slaves that were taken as slaves were slaves to other black people. Did America defile itself with slavery? You're darn right it did. Did America ever really accept slavery? No, it didn't. America always, at one time or another, had a strong and eventually majority anti-slavery movement well before other countries did. The American heroes they're tearing down are heroes that had tremendous moral problems about slavery and wrote about it, which is the reason we were able to get rid of it, which is the thing they should be. Of course, they should be condemned for their views on slavery, but of course, they should also be praised for their beyond their own time's view of the guilt and morality and how it had to end, like Jefferson. And just before I get to my other subject, let me just remind you, we're going to continue this name-changing game. You take down another name and I start a national movement to change the name of the Democratic Party. Because you, Democrats, your party, the one you like to put the name behind you, is the biggest purveyor of slavery in the history of our country. There's no institution that is more associated with black slavery than the Democrat Party. How you have the gall to carry that name around and then want to change Madison's name is just an example of how dishonest and hypocritical you are. Well, I'll tell you who's proven how hypocritical you are. All those tapes that were given away by McCarthy. And boy, I'm still not past the first one. I say that first one, we don't even need anymore. They don't want you to get any more, by the way. Schumer wants McCarthy stopped. No, actually, didn't he call up the networks and tell them not to show them? Well, he called up Fox. He told Fox not to show them. I guess he figures he has a new in with Fox now that Fox has been discovered as somewhat of a quisling, right?
Yeah.
So he figures I'll call up Fox and they'll take it off. I have a feeling this is Fox doing their amends. Plus, I don't know how much Tucker would listen to Fox. Tucker may be more important than Fox from Fox's point of view. I mean, Fox can only go to the well a couple of times. They got rid of their big star once or twice and made it. I don't know if they're in the position they were in then. They had kind of domination on the right then. I think if they dumped Tucker, particularly over an issue like this, whoa. I mean, they're hoping that a number of right wingers agrees with their viewpoint that the election of 2020 was legitimate, because it's almost critical to Fox's credibility at this point. Fox did really not accept the hard drive. Now, their affiliate, the Post, did. The Wall Street Journal turned it down. And then some Fox people put it on and others didn't, under great pressure. Then the issue becomes the stolen election. So they get into deep trouble for calling Arizona 2 minutes after the election results come out, and Biden's ahead by like 10 points or something, but there's 80% of the vote, 90% to count, and everybody's yelling and screaming. Even the other stations aren't calling it because no vote's been counted yet, and the key counties that could help Trump hadn't been counted. End result is it clearly was a fix. If you believe the results, which are completely false, but if you believe them, he only won by 10%. I mean, I'm sorry, 10%. By 10,000 votes, by 1%. You can't call an election after 2 hours that's 1%. You obviously screwed up. And who did you screw up in favor of? Now, you can't tell me that wasn't called because they didn't want to call Pennsylvania, where Trump was ahead by 80,000 votes, with 65% cast. Now, you're going to call either one of those. Which one are you going to call? You're going to call the one in which only 10% of the vote was cast, 90% of the vote is out, and your experts are telling you that there's about an equal number of Trump people out as Biden people. And it's a state that has a Republican history, and it's a state that he won last time. And he was pulling in much bigger numbers now than he was 4 years ago. Remember, he got 10 million more votes this time. That's a pretty bad call against him. So is the other one. He's ahead by 65. He's ahead by 8,000 votes, 65%. I'm sorry, 62% vote cast. Ahead by 800,000, 65%. Mr. Magoo. So they have to make up for it. So now they're putting out this thing. And if you watch this poor shaman, QAnon Shaman. Now, I have not done it. I meant to do it like 5 nights in a row. I like to do research. Did a lot of research today on communism. I mean to do research on what is a shaman. I know about medicine men. I know about Egyptian priests. I don't mean Coptic. I mean the old religion of Isis. I mean, I was a student of religion, comparative religion. Wanted to be a priest.
Oxford.
What do they say? What are the shaman? We're going to look it up. We have
a
to.
Shaman, a person regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits, especially among some peoples of Northern Asia and North America. Typically, such people enter a trance state during a ritual and practice divination and healing. I'm guessing that's some sort of divine intervention.
That was dangerous, right?
The QAnon Shaman.
Yeah. So before, let's be fair now. Before we destroyed the man's life and held him in jail and put him in solitary confinement, which I don't think we did with any of the people who killed 25 or 26 people during 2020, destroyed billions of dollars of property, killed our good friend Captain Dorr, ruined cities, have not come back since then, and I think led to the crime waves that we have today. I'm not sure we put any of them in solitary confinement. We now let them first. We let them all out of jail based on the Soros prosecutors who were put in exactly the right places to do it. And then after that, now we're giving them money. In New York, we're handing them money. I mean, I bet this is funded backdoor by Soros or Kamala Harris, who got them out. And it wasn't Kamala Harris's money. Kamala Harris never used her own money. I'm sure it was Soros's money. So this guy, before we even get anywhere, has already been punished. He's been punished by put in solitary confinement. You know, solitary confinement really is, I used it. I know it. I've put people in solitary confinement. You know who? Mafia people, terrorist people, Nazi people. I didn't put some shaman to the divination of. First thing I would have asked is, when they wanted me to put him in solitary confinement, if I wasn't operating like a Nazi prison guard, right? I would do the following. I would say, did he commit capital crime? No. Is he alleged with serious assault to the point of manslaughter or attempted manslaughter or something like that? No. Does he have a record? No. Military record? Yes. Honorable discharge? Yes. Want to put him in solitary? Did he hit anybody? No. What's the biggest physical damage that he had? I don't know. He took something from, I think he took something from Pelosi's desk and left money for it. Oh. Did he resist arrest? No. No. Did you spend? Oh, yes, officer. How do you know how much of the Capitol he went through? Officer, I can't hear you. Did you know all of the? Do you know how much of the Capitol the guy you want me to put in solitary went through? Well, the officer is supposed to say no, none, but nobody wants to play the officer. None. Well, how do you know that? Well, I escorted them all around. What do you mean you escorted them all around? I escorted them all around the Capitol. Did he break in? No. Did you help him get in? Not really that much. I just helped a little with the door. Oh. But how about when he got into the well of the chamber? Did you help him with that? Oh, that we did help him with a lot. Because the first time he got in, he couldn't get in. The door was locked. So one of us was going to go get a key, but the other one thought, no, maybe the other one's open. So we took him down to the other end, and we helped him get in. He had a little trouble with the door because he had a lot of equipment, so we helped him with the door. Oh. In other words, you held the door for the shaman. Do you believe in his religion? Oh, I don't know what he is, but he sure seems harmless. We were laughing at him. Did he tell any jokes? I guess so. I can't remember now, but I was laughing. And when he got there, did he break up any desk? No. Did he steal anything? No. Did he, sometimes kids do, they scratch things in desks. Did he do that? No. What did he do? Well, he went up to the place, where Pelosi tore up Trump's speech. Maybe he was trying to, maybe he was trying to purify it from evil spirit. He's supposed to be against evil spirits. So maybe he smelled an evil spirit up there. So he went up there, and he started. One time he went up there, and he was pounding his. What do you know what the shaman calls that thing that he holds, Ted? Anybody know what the shaman calls the thing you hold it? He was holding a staff, and he said, I pray for everyone who has helped us here tonight, all of the police, so that we can save our country. Given all of the openings of Congress, no disrespect to any of the clergymen, not all of them are Franklin Graham. Some are great artists, some are okay, and some are boring. He wasn't bad in the mix, Then there's an isolated video of him that, if you look at it carefully, it almost looks like the chamber is burning down. He's on the top where the press all it is smoke. Looks like incense, and he's chanting. as far as I can tell, I tried to get a transcript. I couldn't. I got some descriptions. He says nothing bad. I'm not even saying he uses a curse word. But he's chanting something. Now, we could try to get a translation of it. But, you know, now, there are some people below who are, I didn't see them defacing property. I did see them taking pictures of writings on the desks. Could be that I saw one took something. I saw no destruction. That's it. Then he's escorted out. And then later he's arrested. Okay, now. And then he's described as one of the biggest ringleaders, one of the biggest terrorists in the country, one of the biggest ever. And we're told by the police they couldn't get him out because they'd have been overwhelmed by the mob. Well, in order to produce that fiction, they show you some shots of him when the crooked Pravda media does this. They show you some shots of him juxtaposed against violence, except the violence is taking place at a far different part of the Capitol at a far different time. He was not in that violence. You go through his photos, he's in no violence at all. You see him at times solely in the possession of just 2 police officers, talking to them and happily jaunting along. Another point, you see him with about 8 police officers. He looks like the toast of the town. He's walking around kind of jerky-like, and they're all walking around with him. He then walks into about 10. You count 10 of them right in the middle. Perfect opportunity. Take him down, put the cuffs on. You never see him again. No way it's going to cause a riot. Whatever police officer testified to that, next day should be a perjury indictment. No way. Nobody would even know he was there. Apparently, he had no following. They let him do it because he didn't do anything wrong. They ex post facto made it wrong and destroyed the man's life. If they haven't made him insane. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
on
please.
That, if you don't mind. I wanted to ask a good lawyer. Should I sit on
you
camera?
can,
Why
you
don't you
can
join-
sit, you
join
can
the
stand,
show?
Anybody can ask.
Okay.
We got
Watch your step.
I'll sit in over here, but I have a question for you just on that and on Chomsky in particular. I've been waiting to ask a good lawyer, and no matter what the leftists in DC or New York think, I think you're the best darn lawyer that I know.
Yeah.
So, do you think that Chomsky's lawyer can get a new trial on grounds for appeal, considering he never got to see that evidence, which I believe is obviously exculpatory?
Okay.
Exactly.
The ruling,
Yeah, he's
the
right.
ruling in that says Brady versus the United States. Brady is one of the cases probably cited most often in a federal criminal trial. And here's the requirement. A prosecutor has to turn over to the defense any exculpatory evidence they possess about the defendant. And it is not their interpretation. In other words, even if the prosecutor thinks there are excuses for it, even if he thinks there are defenses to it, if the defense lawyer in any way can use it to the assistance of the defense, he has to turn it over to them. If he has any doubt about it, he has to give it to the judge, and he has the judge to make that determination. The failure to do so is reversal, unless he can show he would have been convicted anyway, which would be very hard here because that was the whole case. Also, it was a massive disclosure.
Mhm.
Usually this comes down to one thing that somebody forgets. It very often is very picayune.
Right.
It's one little stupid thing. There was a restaurant meeting they left out, and there's a little teeny bit of innocence in it.
This is
But
pretty
this is, I
important.
mean, look,
This is right.
they're saying, I mean, the core of the case is he trespassed. Core of the case is he walked into the house tonight.
Mhm.
What kind of case are we going to have if he was standing outside, he came up, and you opened the door and let him in?
So then the question also is, right, he's already spent about 2 years. He's definitely spent 2 years in prison, in jail and in prison, of what's just under a 4-year sentence. So he's already served more than 50%, let's say 60% of his sentence. Let's say even tomorrow he's granted another trial. He gets out of jail tomorrow. He's still served 60% of that trial. Is there going to be, will that have any effect potentially on a civil case that he may able to bring? I guess what I'm asking is, If you were the head of Chomsky's legal team, what tactics would you take now from A, a new trial, and B, from a civil perspective?
Right now, I would move to have all charges against him suspended, dismissed with prejudice. I would say, in the interest of justice, this case, first of all, the case has to be reversed for a trial. Secondly, after what you've put him through and the proof that we've seen publicly at this point, in the interest of justice, the government should dismiss the case completely with prejudice, never to bring it again. And how about a check for $20 million?
There you go.
Now, you don't want to do that, I sue you.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to want that, because how much consultation went on about this case, you think, with Pelosi, with the powers that be, to make sure that this guy got jammed?
So the discovery process on that could be very damaging to.
Well, yeah. Now, how about with all of this, we actually put the guy in solitary confinement? The guy, by the way, has a mental history, a real mental history. He has mental issues. So
was that from? I know he served in the Navy.
Yeah,
Was that
PTSD.
PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has real mental issues, which they have made worse. And by the way, if you watch him, you can tell he's not all there, completely all there. He's not like a well put together, tight wrapped. When I saw it immediately, before I saw the whole thing, until I saw the footage they wanted to use to brainwash me, I said to myself, what are they complaining about? This is crazy. This is a clown show. This is a clown show. And the cops thought it was a clown show. I know cops. They don't act like that with him. They were friendly with him. And they couldn't take him down. All they had to do at any time, there was nobody around, even with the two of them, just slip him into a little doorway.
Yeah, of course. That's it.
Open a doorway, throw him in the doorway. When they come out the doorway, they got a thing over his head, and they got handcuffs on him, and off he is in a car.
You said this already, but it's worth repeating. The Capitol Police, one of the Capitol Police officers, said that they were outnumbered the entire time, and that's why they couldn't. Well, in these tapes, Chomsky was outnumbered 2-1 the entire time, and at one point 9-1. So that absolutely is false and incorrect. And
kind of gives you an idea of the kind of police force you have when a cop tells you he's been outnumbered. If I were mayor now, I want to know the name of that cop. Ain't gonna be in any tough situation for me ever again. Right. When's the last time a Marine said he was outnumbered?
Yeah,
I was outnumbered by a crowd. How about we were outnumbered, but they had no guns? Yeah, kind of square things up a little. Wow, what I can't believe is all the lying that went on about this. But I am surprised, because we had been getting to the point, Ted, where we were cracking through the censorship. People were beginning to get to realize it, but they did this one so fast. They overcame a lot of our wussy cowards so quickly that half of us joined with them. Think of all of the Republican Party that condemned Trump. Think of
amen, Mayor.
Think of the
Crazy.
Think of the Hannity hysterical text to Trump about what was going on. That isn't what was going on.
Not at all.
That is what was being fed to them, to the sheep, and the sheep swallowed it and bleated it back. What was actually going on was a well-organized manipulation of mostly decent people and some very bad people who are on our side, but mostly decent people. Now all you have to do is go back and look at the text messages that they refused to do, of Antifa inviting people there. There's even a calculation of the number of Antifa people there, and look at the investigation. No one has identified a single Antifa person in the crowd. There were 252. Nobody's identified the people next to Ashley Babbitt. Who are they? Who are those people?
And Mayor, anyone who knows about protests in Washington, D.C. and the activist community, just if you know that Antifa was there that day. It's not about proving how much they organized it or didn't organize it. As someone who's been a former journalist in Washington, covered protests, you just know that they were present there that day.
And you also know if they're holding back 40,000 hours of tape, it's not tape that favors Trump.
Another question about that. Why would Mitch McConnell speak out against these 40,000 hours of tape coming out?
At this point,
Great question.
McConnell and Trump had broken completely. McConnell wanted him to give up on the election, focus on just Georgia, take what he got and go away. They did do some good things together, the judges. You cannot discount the fact, and someday this whole story will be written, that Trump is the single greatest living threat to China, at least American. McConnell family is super wealthy, not because of his lifetime service to government, because his wife is a member of a Taiwanese Chinese family that is well regarded by Red China and are billionaires because of Red China, because of communist China. Now, if that doesn't create alarm bells in your head, you don't know world history. Why would the Red Chinese favor any Taiwanese company? Could be accidental. They could be the best at what they do in the whole world. The Chinese could be overlooking their hatred for Taiwan and being fair to one Taiwanese company. They could like one Taiwanese company, or they could be selling out.
Yeah, if they're owned.
I'm not saying they are. I gave you 9 possibilities
Mhm.
other than sellout.
Mhm.
So I don't want to accuse them of selling out. But I do want to be excused if I don't want to find out first before I answer the question.
Well, it's very curious to me and actually very frustrating to me when you have the Senate Minority Leader, who is one of the two most powerful Republicans in D.C., who's speaking out against the transparency. When we're talking about these tapes,
Oh, that's
paid
even worse.
for
I was
by
actually
government taxpayer
I was even
dollars.
answering an earlier question,
Yeah.
a major question earlier, which is why didn't he speak out at the time? But at the
Oh,
time,
no.
at the time,
He's speaking out this
at the
week.
time, I think a lot of them were snowed.
Right.
A lot of them were rolled over. You know, they got really I think Lindsey Graham got rolled over. I think Hannity got rolled over. I think Ingram got rolled over. They were all into, how could you have this happen? How could you have this happen? They don't realize he's getting different reports than they're getting.
Mhm.
He's getting honest reports of what's going on, not the 4 people have been murdered.
Yeah. It was wild how that whole day played
4
out.
people were murdered. Yeah, 1 person was murdered. Your person.
So then to that point, and I should be clearer, why would Mitch McConnell be against the transparency of 40,000 hours of tape being viewed by the American public, right? This should be something where the American public, and look, I'm glad Tucker got to see it, but I would go even further. I would say these tapes should be released
They will be.
to the American people.
I have no doubt. Next step. I think this is a controlled release. You could say that's unfair, but we're dealing in a world in which, they bring in Hollywood
Right.
reporters. I think this is McCarthy brought in his own
Mhm.
Hollywood reporter.
Right.
He said, we're going to put it out. We're going to get our we're going to get our 2 weeks with it to spin it.
It's certainly better than just having
And
the
then,
January 6th
all,
narrative.
then all
committee
you
out there.
guys can have it and tear it apart
Right.
and do what you're going to do. But at least you'll be playing behind the 8 ball the way we are all the time.
Mhm.
This is exactly what they do when they have their hearings. Like me, they interviewed me behind closed doors. They wouldn't give me a transcript. They wouldn't make a transcript. They said it wasn't going to be leaked. They leaked various portions of it, leaving out anything in there that was helpful to me or Trump, which was 90% of it.
Yeah.
And only never even putting in anything harmful. They failed to put in my refutation to the people who lied about me. So, for example, one Jason Miller, to my great disappointment, lied about me. And in that transcript, I explain the truth. Plus, I have 5 witnesses that make him a damn liar. They don't put that out.
Yeah.
So it makes it sound like Jason Miller is telling the uncontradicted truth when it's contradicted not only 1-on-1 but 5-on-1.
Mhm.
A couple of other examples like that, and then I give you other people like that. That's so they can play that selective recitation game.
Right.
I think they got really, really burned by it when Barr put out his conclusions on the Mueller report, and left him out there for 10 days
Yeah.
before they could get the whole report.
Right.
And they got really upset because that was the only thing out.
Yeah.
So they decided never again.
Yeah.
But it never could be fair again.
Right. It's a good point.
Now, guys, if you want to call in, and we're gonna have we may even have a little soccer time tonight. You can call it at 1-646-306-8836. Here's another way to remember it: 1-646-306. Yogi Berra 36. Yogi Berra was 8. 1-646-306-8836. I have a very, very unfortunate piece of news to pass along as we move on to the second part of the show, or second half or third part of the show. The sad news is the Yankees don't seem to be winning any spring training games. And I have terrible news to impart to this audience, which is last time I checked, they were losing to the Red Sox.
I think they did lose the game in the Red Sox. The good thing is it doesn't count. Doesn't count until March 30th.
I remember George Steinbrenner once almost firing Billy Martin over losing a spring training game to the Mets.
Well, we got so much stuff to get our blood pressure up about. A spring training game, I'm going to put a little lower on it right there. When we start to March 30th, then we'll really get it all pumped up over here.
Maybe, if like when he was really a good boy, I got him good stuff for Christmas in Carolina.
Yeah.
Grace is going to get it whether she's good or bad.
Don't tell him how many times you got me cold, though.
That was the next question.
I've got a reputation uphold.
No.
One year I got you presents instead of coal because the price of coal went up so high.
There you go. Exactly.
I was punishing myself buying you coal.
Well, Andrew, before we let you go, any updates tonight? Anything you want to share with our audience?
And how about your new show? Tell us about your new show. Come on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of new shows out there. Not That Andrew podcast. You can get it on Red Apple Media. And then we've got a new Sunday show coming out at the end of the month. So still a couple of weeks. But by the time we get done with this show and this thing gets rolling on Sundays, between uncovering the truth and then the NFL is going to want to move to the week. They're going to say we can't compete with the Giulianis on Sunday.
Yeah,
Too much.
Any more Giulianis to put on? We got any more?
Well, I saw Grace was on last night, and I got jealous, so I said I have to come on here. So we get all three generations of Giuliani. But keep up the great work.
Yeah, I had him on today. I had him on the radio show today because we'll have him on here. I looked
better on the radio, they said. It was the reviews.
You got it, babies. I had him on about fentanyl because he was there at the White House and can personally testify to how the Trump administration and the Republicans and who have always been much more serious about drugs than the Democrats had I would say had some degree of control over fentanyl, had it moving in the right direction. These guys exploded it.
Just a quick 30 seconds on it. When Trump was in office, there were 30 straight years where opioid deaths went up from the very late 80s all the way till when Trump got in office. In 2019, it was the very first year that opioid deaths went down in the country in 31 years. It went down 17%. And in 2020, the first couple of months, opioid deaths were down. And of course, the pandemic hit and they skyrocketed. And then Biden gets in office, January 20th, 2021. You have nearly 5 million border crossings since he came in, and also not just a southern border, but a northern border that's an absolute nightmare right now. And sadly, we're over 100,000 deaths a year now the last 2 years in fentanyl. So it's gone up 80% since Trump left office.
So you want information on fentanyl, what to do about it, and how America can deal with it. You can't go to anything better than RudyGiulianiCS.com. Tell you the resources I have. Andrew, there at the White House, most recent effort. Dr. Maria, who dealt with opioid epidemic in New Hampshire as the president of a hospital in New Hampshire. By the way, you wouldn't believe it. New Hampshire was one of the places most affected by opioids for the last 15 years. New Hampshire, West Virginia. New Hampshire, West Virginia. New Hampshire, West Virginia. Then my modest head of the narcotics division in the U.S. Attorney's Office, we can take that back to the French Connection, the Pizza Connection, and every other form of drug abuse. This is the most frightening and the worst we have ever had. And this is the first one where I can say it's a very well designed, concerted effort that is more like a war than an importation of drugs. I know they often use war on drugs for our effort against them. Some people like it, some people don't. They definitely have a war on us using drugs. Who does? China, a better Mexico. Anybody else? No. Who's their biggest help? Joe Biden. But we'll come back to that one. We'll come back to that one a little bit.
Well, you got 10 minutes left, and using the Yankee references right here, I'm going to get out of your way, and I'm going to let you be like number 42, Mariano Rivera, and close this thing out. Okay?
It'll happen, and then it'll close quick.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight,
Thank-
Andrew.
thank you.
Mayor, we have one more special guest. Just wants to come on and say hi quickly.
Please, yeah.
Come on, Mr. Michael Whalen.
Michael,
A friend of the show. His daughter's a big fan of the show
his daughter is a great help.
and helps out.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ted. It's a pleasure being here. As a father and a grandfather, my question is right along the lines that Andrew was speaking of. I'm very, very worried about the fentanyl, the overdose of drugs of the children in our country, this country, and I really like to know what is the solution and what do you think we need to do?
I'm very glad you asked that, because very often you end these and you explain the problem effectively and you get, but this, and then the feeling is there is no solution. This happens to have a solution to it. And in fact, the tragedy of it is the solution was working, not 100%, maybe not even 70 or 80%, but as an expert in law enforcement, I could tell you, I could see the trajectory working.
And you
You know,
are an
like-
expert.
Yeah, and I fought drugs all my life.
I know you did.
So they, for the first time, as Andrew said, in 30 years, they brought down the amount coming in. What has to be done to stop the amount coming in? Let's go right to the source. It comes in only for one reason, over the Mexican border. Seal the Mexican border.
I agree.
In fact, don't even seal it. Make it a border.
It's not a border.
We say seal the border. The border's supposed to be sealed.
What's wrong with the wall?
Like your door's locked. Otherwise, if your door's locked, it's not your house anymore. Anybody can come in here and be your house. So we have a border that's absurd. Biden in 2020 told them to surge to the border, come in, and we'll get you health insurance. We'll get you COVID insurance. We'll make sure you get education for your kids. We'll make you a citizen. You'll be better off than my own citizens. Just come on in. Then he stopped all enforcement, let everybody come over the border, stopped checking them out in Mexico. Basically, he said to the fentanyl people, free pass. Nobody tries to stop them from coming in. So instead of when people try to stop you from coming in, you come in secretly, you come in quietly, you come in with small amounts so you don't lose billions, right? Now, you can risk anything. You could come in with $20 billion worth of fentanyl, no risk. So that's why we see numbers in some places quadrupling, the worst ever, not just under Trump, quadrupling the worst ever. They say, oh, it's 3 and 4 times Trump. It's 3 and 4 times anybody else. Pick your worst president. He's 4 times that president. And this fentanyl is very, very sneaky. We never thought people, and maybe we were being overly unrealistic, but we kind of convinced people marijuana is no problem, which is pretty sad. Well, you are now as likely to die from fentanyl and marijuana as you are from heroin. So an awful lot of innocent, misled kids are being killed by it. When you hear that somebody died of fentanyl, don't assume there's some kind of major degenerate drug addict. Like a lot of times when you hear about drug overdoses, it's somebody that's been into drugs for 10 years, 20 years, and they just had it. These are people who could be 3rd-time users, 4th-time users. It's being done to kill us and to destabilize us. And it's being done by our biggest enemy, China, and it's one of their 10 or 15 major weapons against us. And our president is aiding and abetting them in doing it. And all of that amounts to me, treason.
Well, Mayor, Michael, thank you for joining us. We want to get a couple calls in before the end of the show. We have a hard stop at 9 tonight because we are going to be live on Newsmax. So,
oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I did, but I forgot.
So we will be taking a couple calls as we speak, and we have a.
Do I look like a pilot?
A little bit. So we're gonna make some calls here. We're gonna see what calls have been coming in, and talk to our friends. All right, South Dakota. Let's go to South Dakota. Oh, that's not South Dakota. Sorry.
Oh, I like South Dakota.
Redfield, South Dakota. Castro Pro. Okay, is it ringing, Mayor?
Just make it a little louder if you could.
It is ringing.
Just make it louder.
Hi-ho.
Hi ho.
This is Mr. Attitude from South Dakota.
Okay, Mr. Attitude in South Dakota. What do you got to say, pal?
Well, I'm listening here tonight, Rudy. First of all, appreciate your work here getting the good word out. But I'm hearing all this negativity about Ukraine and the border and fentanyl and all the negatives. And obviously there is a lot of negative going on in our world. And I just wanted to just pause this here a little bit tonight and
Is it not coming through?
and
Sorry.
talk a little bit about some of the positive attitudes going on in the world. There's
Well,
a
I'd
lot
like
of
to hear that.
positive-
I'm all for that. Go tell me.
Exactly. And I here in South Dakota, we got a lot of good positive stuff going on. Obviously, we like to refer to ourselves as the Sunshine State,
Okay.
And even when it's blizzarding like it has been today here in South Dakota, we know that above all the storms in life, the sun is still shining out there. And we got a lot of storms going on in this world right now.
Now, Mr. Attitude, I got that. But how does that save the life of a bunch of kids tonight who are going to get shot in Chicago or take fentanyl?
Right.
Or the people in Afghanistan that we double crossed and are getting killed because America walked out. How do we fix that?
Well, I'm a big believer in humanity. I'm a big believer in the power of the people and taking the negatives in this world. What we need to do is take all these negatives and working together, find creative and innovative ways to take these negatives and turn them into positives. It isn't going to happen by osmosis. It isn't going to happen by sitting around grumbling and complaining or pouting and whining about it. It's going to take a concerted effort. Yes, starting with communications like we are having here tonight.
Good.
But I think it's much more than that. We need to work on getting our priority in our own personal lives. Dads being dads and men working like we need to work, bringing the work ethic back, bringing kindness back into our world, being kind to our neighbors. And when we see those kindnesses, when we see the good in life.
Well, I agree with that. I think that I would call that the broken windows theory of fixing society. You start with the small things and they build up into the big things. And in a relatively short period of time, you can change an entire society. But right now we got an emergency. It's like we're under attack. What would you think if a president organized a military force, went across the border and wiped out the cartels?
Well, these kinds of things are happening all the time and have been going on by our shadow government that's been operating up above our in place government. From what the CIA has been doing over the last dozens and dozens of years, and oh my goodness, there's just so much muck and chaos in this world. The things that are even out of control of the common man.
I have no knowledge at all of the CIA, and the CIA wouldn't do that anyway. I have no knowledge of our using any military or massive law enforcement force against the Mexican cartels during Biden. None. They are completely unobstructed. All the pictures I've seen of them, they're running the border. Don't you think that we would cut the number of deaths in half if we got rid of them and they were around the border?
Well, I can appreciate all efforts in protecting our homeland by securing our border and doing everything we absolutely got to do.
Mr. Attitude, you keep calling us. Yeah, you keep calling us, and you let us give us that happy view. I think that's a good view to have. I think it may be a little premature to do the happy dance right now. Right now, of the two options, should we dance around and sing Kumbaya, or should we send a military force across the border and wipe out every one of those cartels killing Americans? I would say the latter. And not only that, I think I could convince my former employer, Mayor Lobrador, to do that. In fact, I know Trump could convince him to do it because Trump convinced him to do a few things he didn't want to do. You just have to make him an offer he can't refuse.
And Mayor, you usually go into what we call extra time, stoppage time. Tonight, though, you're going to be live on Newsmax in 5 minutes. So we're going to have to sign off at 9 p.m. sharp. Do you want to send our audience off until tomorrow?
I do. I want to send you off until tomorrow, and I want you to concentrate on the wonderful things that man said about a great attitude. Within 3 or 4 years, we can have that great attitude again. But that great attitude can't substitute for wiping out the cartels at the border. Let's be realistic. Only naive people can ignore evil. Adults have to confront and fight evil. God bless America.